Hello and welcome to the LLG Grapevine podcast. You're listening to Helen McGrath, LLG's Executive Director of Policy, and I'm joined today by guest contributor, one of our amazing interns, Simran Panesar. Welcome, Simran.
Hi, everyone.
Now, every year, LLG takes 3 interns to help us deliver all the varied membership offerings and campaign work streams, so integral to improving the local government landscape and in turn the communities which we serve. We know that there are great challenges to recruitment into the local government sector, and the legal profession is no exception to that. Our intern programme, which started with 1 appointment 3 years ago, has increased to 3 this year. And we've seen 2 of our previous interns go on to work in local government permanent employment, and 1 move to the private legal sector. So win-win for us and no pressure on you, Simran. Now, Simran, you were down at the spring conference in Leeds this month. How did you find it?
I found it amazing. It was so well organised and everything came together so well. It was great to be able to also see everyone in person and to be able to just kind of put names to faces. I was also part of one of the junior lawyer workshops, which was becoming the monitoring officer. What skill sets and experiences are recruiters looking for? So although I'm not quite at MO stage just yet, I did find it quite helpful and relevant to where I'm currently at in my career as a recent graduate.
Well, aspiration is everything. I always say to anybody, ambition, think, look where you want to go, and don't think you can't, because we all started out potentially a bit like that, and we need to recognise that the skill sets that the junior professions are growing will eventually take them to those leadership positions. And if somebody wants that, then there's no reason why they shouldn't be able to achieve it. And we're certainly working hard to help people skill themselves up, and we've got our Inspire program as well, which you can find information about on our website. But for now, let's get on to the business of the news. Elections continue to dominate, but what else caught our eye? Well, I understand there's more revelations from the post office inquiry.
Yes, Helen, and a particular focus on the conduct of solicitors involved. The Law Gazette is pretty good at their coverage on this, but the inquiry website itself holds a wealth of information, including transcripts. We've got headline grabbers with lawyer accused of conspiring to pervert course of justice and solicitor accused of being epitome of arrogance. Really very serious stuff here. So what do we know? Well, we've got Director of Second Sight Investigations telling the public inquiry that documents showing conclusively that sub-postmasters were innocent were not disclosed. Further, that the director, whose name is Henderson incidentally, was told by the senior post officer lawyer at the time, if I said anything that harmed the post officer, they would not hesitate to take legal action against me under the terms of my non-disclosure agreement, and that I would not be able to afford the legal fees. Henderson said that I took this as a thinly veiled threat to bankrupt me if I continued causing trouble. We also heard that a law firm partner was responsible for an avoid disclosure message for which a trainee was previously blamed, in that the partner was asked to advise on a draft email written by a trainee on whether to hand over guidelines for prosecutions. In particular, the draft had an extra paragraph inserted into it, which the partner drafted, which stated, "For now, we'll do what we can to avoid disclosure of these guidelines and try to do so in a way that looks legitimate. However, we are ultimately withholding a key document, and this may attract some criticism from the claimant's firm. If you disagree with this approach, do let me know." So, there is going to be lots of fallout from this, and I understand more firms will be coming under the spotlight in the coming weeks. Helen.
Well, I would urge all in-house lawyers to read and follow the SRA guidelines for that sector and to reach out and ask for advice where they feel uncomfortable. It's all about ethical governance. Now, a cautionary tale on the use of social media and how easy it can be to land oneself in hot water even if you didn't intend to do so. Now, this is reported in the Law Gazette by John Hyde. I haven't seen John in years, as it happens, so if you're listening, John, I hope all is well and do get in touch. Now then, John reports a prominent solicitor judge who liked a LinkedIn post referring to an Israeli terrorist has been issued with a formal warning after it was accepted he made an inadvertent mistake. Now, Deputy Senior District Judge Tanwir Ikram accepted that liking the post had raised concerns about his impartiality, but commissioned a technical report to show the posting had been an accident because he had liked a post that referenced Palestine and Israel. His liking of the comment was reported in the Times and other newspapers back in February of this year. And Ikram himself referred himself to the Judicial Conduct Investigations Office, which I understand subsequently received more than 60 complaints, including from the Campaign Against Anti-Semitism. Now, Ikram made representations that he had not intended to like the post, describing it, in his words, as repulsive. He provided a report which confirmed that he had no direct social media connection with the poster of the comment. And the report also stated that it was abundantly simple for a LinkedIn user to inadvertently like a post on an iPhone by double tapping an image. And I think actually, from my own knowledge, the same applies to Facebook as well. So social media guidance for judges cautions against any activity which could undermine public confidence in judicial impartiality. And it also advises it's not appropriate to refer to a judicial role on any private social media profile. Ikram accepted that he had not familiarised himself with the latest guidance for judges on social media use. And the JCIO nominated judge found that Ikram had breached the guidance by identifying himself as a judge on LinkedIn. I have to say, I didn't know you could do that, couldn't do that, but obviously I'm not a judge. But the judge also noted that his posts were mostly in connection to his diversity work, and there were no other inappropriate posts or likes, and it was accepted that he had indeed triggered the like accidentally. But be careful when using social media. Now, Simran, what else caught your attention?
So the LGA Bulletin is always a good source of information, and in particular, I was looking at the feature on rental system. So apparently, the general election may be the last chance to fix the UK's renting system. Housing organisations have warned as they called on party leaders to come up with bolder solutions to the crisis. In an open letter, groups representing tenants said thousands more people face homelessness, poverty, and exploitation unless a serious policy offer is made available. This was picked up by Sky News, amongst others, and a renter told Sky News how he had been priced out of his home following a 40% increase in rent, despite the flat having an excessive mould issue. The groups, including the New Economics Foundation and Generation Rent, want all party leaders to commit to rent controls, a full ban on no-fault evictions, and greater investment in social housing. We know, don't we, that housing is one of those huge problematic areas facing the sector at large, and it does feature in some of the parties' manifestos. Let's see how quickly post-4th July the government will move to address this, whichever party they are.
Well, let's hope so, because there's definitely a housing crisis. Now, reported by the BBC, councils in England are forecasting a massive shortfall in budgets for supporting children with special educational needs. The BBC has found councils face a deficit of almost £1 billion in schools funds for these pupils. Parent groups say they fear children could suffer in a push to cut deficits as demand rises at the same time as councils face growing pressure on their budgets. Now, since 2019, the accumulated deficit in England for special educational needs or disabilities has reached £3.2 billion, and that's according to the County Council's network. And there's every sign of the gap between funding and spending increasing since last year. The Local Government Association reports that the number of children and young people in England requiring support for special education needs and disabilities has increased sharply, according to new data. Local authorities issued 84,400 education, health and care plans, known as EHCPs, last year, according to figures released by the Department for Education, a 26% increase compared with 2022. Nearly 1 in 19 children in England aged between 5 and 15 now have an EHCP. Councillor Louise Gittings, who's chair of the LGA's Children and Young People Board, said in response, quote, councils want to be able to provide the very best support to children with special education needs and their families. However, these record figures are a reminder of the huge pressure councils are under, with the number of EHCPs increasing every year since they were first introduced in 2014. Now, when you look at this against the backdrop of the BBC report, it's a major contributor to the financial crisis in terms of deficits on SEND budgets, and one that the government is just going to have to get a grip on if it doesn't want more failing councils. However, to my knowledge, none of the main parties mentioned the shortfall in SEND budgets directly in their manifestos, although mention of SEND provision was raised in other ways. Simran.
So I was really quite alarmed to read an article in The Guardian about abuse of female election candidates becoming worse, according to candidates, activists, and charities. One female Labour candidate in the north of England said the harassment continues apace in the build-up to the election, with online harassment being a particular problem. Then the article went on. As well as being subjected to hate speech and targeted comments online, she said she had also experienced disinformation being spread about her and malicious complaints being made against her to public bodies. With the candidate being quoted as saying, "Some days you can put a good face on and go out and face it," she said, "and other days you can think, why do I do this? Why do I bother? Your family are saying it's not worth it, step down." And these conversations are happening up and down the country with candidates and their families. And people who are thinking about putting themselves forward think, well, do I really want to open myself up to this? It's corrosive to our democracy. This is a real problem for the sector, and one that LLG has covered a number of times. And of course, we have actively supported the LGA's Debate Not Hate campaign. But it doesn't seem to be getting better. This needs to be seen in the light of being a threat to our very democracy, because that's exactly what it is. It is quite concerning, Helen.
No, it really is, and it is getting worse. All the data out there shows that it is. And, you know, whilst there is hatred perpetrated against male candidates, the statistics demonstrate that females and those with disabilities are disproportionately affected by this issue. And ultimately, it is going to fetter democracy because, as you explained, Simran, why put yourself through this kind of horrible experience to serve your community? I don't know what the answer is. I think social media platforms need to get a lot more on board in terms of the way in which it's really it's far easier to do things online than it is perhaps to say to somebody in person. I think education is the key for the public to to understand what it is that councillors and MPs are actually doing. But if there are any councillors listening that have any concerns, please do speak to your monitoring officer at your local authority. I would very much urge you to do that. And on that note, you can read more on these items by going to bulletin number 22, available on the LLG website. And don't forget, you can follow us on the Grapevine podcast on Spotify. Have a good week, everyone.